Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the African Five-A-Side podcast. My name is Maher Mazahi. I'm your host. This podcast is brought to you by africasaCountry.com. Today, we just wanted to make a few quick videos, and the first one being a reaction to 2024-2025 CAF Confederation Cup draw for the knockout stages. Um, Now, we didn't really cover the CAF Confederation Cup group stages, but I do want to cover all of the knockout stages, so from the quarterfinals, obviously, until the final. Um, and we had 8 teams obviously make it to this point of the competition. We had Stellenbosch, Zamalek, ASEC Mimosa, RS Berkane, CS Constantine, USM of Algiers, Simba, and El Masry. So we're going to start with the first quarterfinal that was drawn, Stellenbosch versus Zamalek. Now, Stellenbosch, if you haven't had the chance to listen to it yet, there's an episode where we spoke with Lorenz Kohler from South Africa, and he sort of profiled the club for us. And he told us that, they were backed by this like rich conglomerate. They're out in Cape Town, where maybe there's more of a rugby culture than a football culture, but that this club in particular was managed very smartly. They use a lot of data. They use a lot of good scouting. They bring in a lot of youthful players. They sell players for high transfer fees and reinvest that money intelligently. And I remember me saying, yeah, but if they don't have any fans, are they going to be able to compete at the CAF Confederation Cup? What's the expectation here? He almost sort of said, if they can make it out of the group stages, that would be what he thinks is a successful addition for them in the CAF Confederation Cup, and that's essentially what they did. Now, they didn't start the group stages in a good way. It's their first ever edition in these interclub competitions, and they lose to Stade Malien in the first match, 2-0 away from home. Speaking to South African journalists, they told me that they rotated players in that squad because they had a match coming up against Orlando Pirates, and they thought that they could take care of business versus Stade Malien, but maybe they underestimated them because apparently they found it very difficult to advance scout Stade Malien because there's no real footage, um, or they struggled to find footage of the Malian club, and that's not something we really think about too much. Is when you play in more obscure leagues, you kind of have a tactical advantage over these more televised leagues where you can watch every single match, really. Um, and so they underestimated Stade Malien. They lost that first match, and then they lose to RS Berkane as well. And that third match, it's teetering 0-0 against the Angolan side Lunda Sul. And if they draw there or if they lose, they're pretty much out of the competition in their first 3 matches, but they end up snatching a last minute goal. It comes from Devin Titus, one of their best players. I think he scores in the 89th minute, and then they're off and running. But really, for me, my main question with Stellenbosch is how would they cope with, the loss of, Ikram Rainers last year, and then this winter they lose Jaden Adams, and they haven't really made a like for like replacement from what I'm understanding. From what my South African friends have told me, it's more they brought in, one midfielder named Tato Kiba. I think he's been um, man of the match for some matches in January. Lasiba and Ku from Mamelodi Sundowns, who I think apparently wasn't really getting a shot, but has added a little bit of pace and attacking elements to Stellenbosch. We spoke about Devin Titus. Fawaz Basadian is a Bafana international as a defender. And then they have the strikers, 2 strikers, but the one in particular that seems to be doing a good job of holding up play and everything is De Jong from New Zealand. So Stellenbosch are a good side for sure. They have a lot of interesting young players. They're probably going to play good quality, quick, pacey football. But they're coming up against Zamalek, and Zamalek are defending champions. Um, this is not the first year that Zamalek plays in interclub competitions, far from it. Um, Now the thing with Zamalek though is they're less stable. Stellenbosch have Steve Barker as their coaching. They've had him for a while. Zamalek just brought in Jose Pissarro, the former Nigerian national team football coach, the Portuguese coach who's, I think they say he's best friends with Jose Mourinho. And what he did so well with Nigeria was that he managed to bring a lopsided squad, which maybe had good defenders, good strikers, but not so many great midfielders. And he managed to use them in a 5-4-1 system, focusing on defense. He really brought out the best qualities of Victor Osimhen, even though he didn't score that many goals in the AFCON. So yeah, I like Jose Pissarro as a coach. Initially, I really wasn't sure about him, but he really convinced me throughout his time with Nigeria, and I think Nigeria made a mistake not extending him. So yeah, they brought him in just I think last week or 2 weeks ago. And it's going to be curious to see if he's going to be able to get Zamalek firing that quickly. That's it's one thing when you speak English and you're the coach of the Nigerian national team. It's another thing completely, that Zamalek in particular, there's so much pressure there. Um, country, they'll speak English too, but it's mostly Arabic dominated. It's a tough job, and I don't. Zamalek is one of those squads that I think is probably on downturn, unlike Stellenbosch, which has players that are rising. Zamalek, when I look at it, they have a lot of aging, experienced players, which is good in these competitions. Players like Zizou, Omar Gaber, Abdallah Saeed, El Wench in defense. Um, like Zizou, for example. You guys don't need me to go player by player, but Zizou he must have more than 40, 50 caps for Egypt now. Can be a regular starter for Egypt. Takes great penalties, free kicks, great winger. Omar Gabet is that right back defender, but can play a little bit centrally as well. So reliable. Abdullah Saeed is that central attacking midfielder in the pocket. But I think he's played for every single big club in Egypt, Ahli Zamalek and Pyramids. And then El Wench is that left footed defender that we saw Fiston Mayele bully in the most recent match between Pyramids and Zamalek. There's a video on this channel as well, breaking down Pyramids versus Zamalek. So if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you do too. So yeah, but all of those players I think are old or they've suffered severe injuries like El Wench. So I think Zamalek are on the downturn, but at the same time, I just see they have too much quality, too much experience, plus home field advantage. Second match is going to be played in Egypt, not in South Africa. I have to go with Zamalek over here. Next match is ASEC Mimosa versus Berkane. Um, Look, ASEC last year they impressed me in the CAF Champions League. They got further than I expected them to, and it ended up I think going to penalty shootouts with Esperance de Tunis before ASEC were eliminated. This year they're weaker. I mean, they sold a lot of their players. I forget the name of. They had one player that was like leading the CAF Champions League in scoring last year. They sold him halfway through the season. I want to say it's Karamoko Sankara or something like that. They have the player that they sold to Al Hilal, Serge Poku, who hasn't really played much for Al Hilal. They sold a few, I think 3 or 4 players to Stade d'Abidjan, who are ahead of them in the league now. They're not even first in the Ivorian league. So I don't really see ASEC Mimosa as good as they were last season. Last season they were defending like crazy. They had 2 very strong defenders, Anthony Trabi and one Koulibaly. They don't have those players anymore. They still do have an experienced left back, Zuzu. They have a very good goalkeeper, Charles Foley. He's 34 years old, very experienced. He's been part of AFCON winning squads as Cote d'Ivoire's third goalkeeper. Um, but as like they're always gonna have exciting talent. And here I like Diarra Suba. He's their central attacking midfielder. Um, but overall, when I look at their squad, I don't think they have what it takes, especially not coming up against RS Berkane, because RS Berkane, according to I think the consensus, most African journalists they're going to tell you that they've been the most impressive side in Africa this season, all things considered. Most points in the group stages in the CAF Confederation Cup, and they're just flying away with the Botola. Um, and the thing that I like about Berkane is that they don't have too many high-profile players, but their most credentialed players are in the back five. So Munir Al Hamdi, the goalkeeper, was Morocco's starting goalkeeper before Yassine Bounou exploded, but he's so reliable, so much experience. Won a bronze medal with Morocco at the Olympic Games last summer. Then you have players like Issoufou Dayo is the captain of Berkane. I think he's been there for 8 years now from Burkina Faso. Tall central midfielder, sorry, central defender that scores so many goals. I think he scored around 8 goals this season. And then you have Adil Tahif, another center back, and Haytham El Manaut. These are 2 players that were, young players playing matches at the Olympics in the very, very talented Morocco squad. Then you have Hamza El Moussaoui, who's I think he's amassed like 12 caps for the senior Moroccan national team. So all of these, these are all center back, right back, left back, and goalkeeper, and those are their most credentialed players. But they still have very good complementary midfield. They have aggressive wingers that score a lot of goals, including threats in the air, and their striker Oussama Lemliwi. I, I don't. I wasn't expecting him to have this good of a season. I think many Moroccans journalists weren't either, but I think he has 7 goals in his last 10 matches. He's been absolutely on fire. And so if he continues that kind of form, they're going to continue to be very, very dangerous. They're clear favorites, in my opinion, over ASEC Mimosa here. Next, we have a sort of Algerian derby, CS Constantine versus USM of Algiers. CS Constantine is an underrated side because, like, uh, worse than Berkane, they really don't have any notable players that anybody would know outside of Algeria. But their squad is chock full of 18 to 21 players that are all, like they're all between the age of 24 to 30. They're right in the prime of their career. They're experienced. They're not superstars, so they're still hungry. They're ambitious. They always put in a 7 out of 10 performance. You see the kind of player, like, just if you, they're a player, if you watch the league, you say, oh, that's a good player, but he's not good enough to get called up to the national team. He's not good enough to play for a top three club, but he's good enough to stick around. And, if you have enough of those players all over the squad, then you don't really have any weaknesses. CS Constantine are that kind of side. And it's really embodied in their midfield, of Mohamed Ben Shghira, Brahim Deeb, who's the sort of captain, plays in it's kind of central attacking midfield. He takes all the set pieces and free kicks, takes all the penalties. Ben Shghira is more of like a defensive midfield that likes to distribute, and Masala Merbah is more the leggy midfielder that gets up and down the pitch and breaks up play. Um, if you watch the Algerian league, you know those players and you think, oh yeah, those are all good players. Are they good enough to sign for Al Ahly or go to Europe? No, but they do the job and they do it consistently and they step up on big occasions. Other thing I like at CS Constantine is their goalkeeper, Zakaria Bouhalfai. I think he's having a fantastic year. And I like the fact that they have so much depth as well in so many different positions, whether it's wingers, strikers, defenders, even goalkeeper. So CS Constantine, you're going to have to beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. They're coming up against USM of Algiers, another giant of Algerian football. It's a weird one for them this season because they just sacked their coach Nabil Mahloul, the Tunisian coach, a Tunisian coach who, by the way, won a CAF Champions League before, who um, made it to the World Cup with the Tunisian national team, and they sacked him. I think as a USM of Algiers is sitting second or third in the Algerian league. I think just a handful of points away from league leaders MC of Algiers, doing great in the CAF Confederation Cup. His only real the only real criticisms is that he lost the derby against MC of Algiers 3-0 and that they haven't been scoring goals. They've been playing ugly football. But I mean that's a style. That's a way of getting it done, you know? They have a better defense than MC of Algiers. And MC of Algiers is like probably the best one of the best defense in Africa at the moment. So USM of Algiers, I think it was I'm starting to lean to think it was a mistake to sack Nabil Maloul, but they brought in a good coach, Marcus Paqueta. Paqueta. He was the coach at Sierra Belouizdad before. He won the Algerian League with Sierra Belouizdad. He knows what it's like to coach in the CAF Champions League. He got off to a good start in his first match, beating NC Magra 2-0. Good coach, but I don't know. I don't like the sacking of Maloul, to be honest. USM of Algiers is also interesting because they feel like they were cheated out of defending their title last year, and we're not gonna really get into politics and unless Berkane beats ASEC Mimosa and they're gonna have to come up against an Algerian side, then we're gonna have to get into the whole Algeria Morocco beef again, which is very tiresome. Um, but what I would just say very briefly is that USM of Algiers feels like they were not beaten on the pitch. They won the CAF Confederation Cup 2 years ago. Last year in the semifinals, political decisions are what sort of eliminated them, not anything that happened on the pitch. And if you don't know what happened, you can type in RS Berkane, some of Algiers on this YouTube channel, and I try to explain it to the best of my ability. Um, so yeah, they have a really great defense again, despite losing their captain Zinedine Belid. They brought in a defender from TP Mazembe, Kevin Mondeko, and he's been their best player from DR Congo. He's been incredible, so good. Other than that, they have, one of the Algerian national team goalkeepers, Osama bin Bout. They have a really promising center half, Adam Alilat. They have Glody Lokanza, another player from TP Mazembe, Congolese midfielder that's been getting in on the goals. Um, the one thing that there's two things I don't like. The fact that they sacked their coach, Nabil Ma'loul. Number two, their striker, Ismail Belqasmi, who I think is leading the CAF Confederation Cup in goals, has been signed to Ahli Tripoli in Libya over the January window. And they tried to replace him by bringing in, two or three players, but they didn't really bring in anybody reliable that's proven it with his kind of track record. And Belqasmi is not an out and out striker. He's more of like a second striker. He can play on the wing. He can play as a number nine, but I don't think it's his true position. But he's just consistently scoring time and time again. And so for them to give him up in the middle of the season like this, but it's just that the Libyan sides came in with $400,000, and we really need to talk about Libyan clubs soon because man, the amount of money that they've pumped into African football, buying in, so many North African players, unveiling and inaugurating brand new stadiums. So much to talk about there. So that's going to be an episode very, very soon. But yeah, so they lose Bilqasmi and they fired their coach. So we'll see how they replace him. So far, so good. One of their new signings has gotten off to a quick start, Mehdi Merghem. But that's something that gives me pause. And just because of their pedigree, because I think they're hungrier to avenge their elimination last year, I'm going to go with USM of Algiers. So far, Zamalek, Berkane, USM of Algiers, who, by the way, those three sides were the sides that I thought would be favorites heading into this tournament. So it's been pretty predictable. And then finally, Simba versus Masry. Masry are an Egyptian side, kind of like CS Constantine, you know, underrated. A lot of experienced players everywhere. As players like Fakhreddin bin Yusuf, Salah Mohsen, Mahmoud Hamada. These are Egyptian. They have Egyptian national team caps. Mohsen and Hamada. Fakhreddin bin Yusuf feels like he's been playing for 15 years now in these interclub competitions, and the Tunisian redhead striker, and he's still scoring goals. They have an Algerian player named Abderrahim Daghmoum, really wiry, long, kind of like Riyad Mahrez, sort of um, attacking midfielder. They have Mohamed El Shami, who got two caps playing for Egypt last time. So they have like a lot of these players that flirt with the Egyptian national team, make it in, take it out. Just really good underrated players like CS Constantine, and they're going up against the side that also don't beat themselves in Simba. Um, I haven't watched a lot of Simba. I haven't watched any Simba, to be completely honest with you guys. But speaking to Tanzanian friends, Salim Said, he was telling me Fadlu Davids has done, who, if you're South African, you should know on his channel. Coach Fadlu Davids has galvanized this team. It's a new team. It's a young team. Most of their senior players or experienced players have moved on. And he finally knows his best 11, apparently. They just added an interesting signing in January, Eli Mpanzu from the DRC, and he's added a spark to their attack in transition. Um, yeah, Dennis Kibu, Lionel Ateba, Musa Kamara, just some, like really great signings over the summer. Kibu's been having a great year, and he tells me there's quite optimism at Simba. Like it's especially because that second leg is in Dar es Salaam, can they get a good result in Egypt in the first leg? That's really what it is. But the fact that the second leg is in Tanzania is such a big advantage for them. So I'm going to pick them just because of that. So Simba, USM of Algiers, Berkane, and Zamalek to go through. Those are my picks for the Confederation Cup. And now we're going to talk about the Champions League.